Mounting tensions on the Korean Peninsula, North Korea has fired more rockets, including a possible intercontinental ballistic missile, or an ICBM. This is a long-range weapon that can carry a nuclear warhead to the other side of the globe and is said to be Pyongyang's most powerful. But South Korean officials say the ICBM launch appears to have failed mid-flight. Officials believe the North fired its signature Hwasong-17. The rocket flew about 750 kilometres before falling into the sea between the Korean Peninsula and Japan. The missile test triggered panic in Japan. Alarms blared and warnings were broadcast in the northern prefectures of Miyagi, Yamagata and Niigata, urging residents to seek shelter indoors or underground. About an hour after North Korea fired this suspected ICBM, Japanese Coast Guard reported 2 more launches. Seoul says these were short-range ballistic missiles. In response to Pyongyang's provocations, the US and South Korea announced plans to extend their joint air defense exercises. Operation Vigilant Storm kicked off on Monday and had been scheduled to last for a week. Seoul did not say how long the drills will now go on for. Both sides say they must demonstrate the strength of their alliance in the face of threats from the north. Pyongyang has said it considers the training practice for invasion and has vowed strong retaliation. There fears the country will soon conduct a nuclear test. North Korea fired an unprecedented 23 rockets yesterday. That's the most launched in a single day this year. For all this, Simon Marks joins us live from Washington, D.C. Simon, the U.S. and South Korea say they plan to extend their drills. Is this move not going to just add more fuel to the fire?
Well, from the position of the Biden administration, Wei-Su, this is something that President Biden is absolutely committed to, not least, of course, because his predecessor in office, former President Donald Trump, raised questions about whether joint military exercises like these with the South Koreans ought to continue or whether they weren't, as the former president described them, a waste of money, not worth the American taxpayers' dollars. So the administration has wanted as a centerpiece of its policy towards the region to underscore that these alliances do matter to Washington and therefore that these military exercises absolutely will continue. But more broadly than that, this is an American president who on the one hand doesn't really want to be distracted by Pyongyang and Kim Jong-un, particularly in the closing days of America's midterm election campaign, but more broadly than that, absolutely wants to demonstrate that the United States is not going to back down in the face of what it argues is North Korean aggression. So there was never any likelihood that the United States would step back from these military exercises with the South Koreans under the leadership of Joe Biden. And certainly, I think, very little doubt that these exercises are perceived by the Biden administration as important in terms of responding visibly to the increasingly threatening posture that the Americans believe the North Koreans are now conveying in the Korean Peninsula.
Simon, drills like these essentially signaling strong ties with U.S. allies. Oh, that's just one policy option. Another is, of course, diplomatic talks. Those have stalled since 2019 under the former president, President Trump. Another option, are there any other options that the U.S. has right now to manage North Korea?
Well, there is another option, and that is to focus more effort on trying to establish dialogue with the North Koreans. President Biden, absolutely, from the moment that he arrived in the Oval Office, has not wanted to be distracted from the central issue that he thinks he needs to confront, which is steering America's economy back on the path to prosperity, especially at a time when we're in this midterm election campaign here and voters convey that it is the economy that is the number one issue that is on their minds as they head into polling stations. So the idea that President Biden particularly wanted to be distracted by North Korea or even by Russia is something that the White House really pushed back on when President Biden first arrived in the Oval Office. Now, after the midterm elections are over, it is possible that there may be more latitude for the president to engage in efforts to try and bring the North Koreans to the table. Those efforts have been made at lower levels and they have failed over the last couple of years. But there's no question that as North Korea tests more of these weapons and more of these missiles, they are attracting the attention of a Biden administration that realizes that this is an issue that is going to require some kind of strategy to deal with it in the months and years ahead.
Oh, thanks for that. Simon Marks in Washington, D.C.